How are you? It's MJ from Alta Love, and today the strongest thing coming through is just about living in the flow. And I've woken up at my normal time of sort of 4:30 in the morning, and naturally just started like moving throughout my morning movements, which included making coffee. I actually went outside and took a breath of fresh air this morning, came back in, did some yoga, did some website updating, did some posting on social media, and did some meditation. And then I randomly started cleaning, so I did some vacuuming and then just some puttering around, and now here I am. I'm doing some posts. I had a little very brief little business meeting that was also part of the flow this morning. And I got to say one of the biggest leaps I made as far as living in the flow was at the beginning of 2016. I'd been doing a lot of practice. I've been living intuitively and guided for my heart for many, many years now. And part of that journey included a fairly deep and disciplined yoga practice and meditation practice over the last sort of decade. And then in 2016, just taking this massive leap and saying, no, this is how I want to live my life. I desire greater financial wealth, greater financial abundance, to access greater freedom, to live in a more abundant and fluid way, to travel whenever I desire and to travel how I desire, and to have a career that I am absolutely in love with and passionate about. And that leap that I took involved walking away from actually like an amazing relationship, an amazing man, but in truth, something wasn't quite right. Something wasn't quite aligned. And, both of us have grown since then. And my life is still settling back onto a new timeline, you could say. So, my physical reality, I had to move from the place that I was living. He left. Lots of things have happened. My mother's come back, and my mother has then left, and massive financial transformation. Dissolved and walked away from a lot of private yoga clients. And now I'm starting to feel more stable footing with just being a YouTuber, being a vlogger, being a spiritual life coach or an intuitive life coach, or I call it the fearless life coach. Doing group coaching on the Fearless Life Tribe, offering online stuff like this with people. And it really, I've done quite a few shares about this, right? When you're like just bombarded by your own dream, awesome manifestations, and you have like moments of recognition of like, I'm actually living the life I set out to live, or I'm actually living the life I desire to live. And it's not like every single thing is always in place, because in essence every experience is an experience of contrast, which is helping you birth more desires. But last year, coming into my I was 33 and I was about to turn 34, and yet again, there was some awesomeness and great abundance in my life in as far as conscious manifestation went, but something wasn't quite right. And I basically had to risk it all. I had to completely risk everything I'd worked up until that point, to live in the flow. And I can remember knowing when took that leap, and even though there was like heartache and different things to deal with, I could feel this like force just take over my life. And my observation from that point has been completely different. My self-awareness from that point has been completely different, much more expansive, much more expanded. And I remember at a few moments thinking to myself, like, there is definitely no going back after this point. I can feel it. I can feel that I've kind of like clicked in to my stream, as it were. And even right now, I can feel the yoking of that stream, that this is, speaking about this stuff, speaking about spiritual awakening, speaking about transformation, speaking about what it actually means from within yourself to be fearless or to live a fearless life, and then how we as an individual and then as a collective, how we ultimately transform the reality with which we're perceiving. And all of that stuff has just like channel boom, and like it's been released, and that's living in the flow. And when you know, it is undeniable. It's like liberation, salvation, and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely undeniable when you hook into that stream that you're in it. Everything makes a lot more sense from that point. Doesn't mean like you're totally in perfect rigid control over your life. In fact, it's sort of paradoxical because it's kind of not like that at all, but at the same time you do feel in dominion of your own energy streams. And that's actually something that was coming through a little bit last night, this sort of the shift of the paradigm, which everything's not just linear, it's cyclical, spiraling, infinite, expansive, and you really do become like the eye of the storm being really everything you are and everything outside of you, physically speaking, or that which we think is the physical. So we extend our consciousness to sort of enfold all of that potential creation and simply work within our own sense of self and the energies that we're carrying, i.e. the emotions we feel when we come up against certain circumstantial evidence of our own holding patterns, and not being so attached to it, because recognizing there's a huge amount of the human collective population who has really come to this planet to help clean that up, to help raise people up, to help sit with shitty emotions and dense emotions and dark distortions and corruption and deception and betrayal and jealousy and hatred, to sit with all of that, work it out, forgive it all, and then let it go and move beyond it, essentially move beyond it, fundamentally actually totally move beyond it. And I can feel that we're very much headed into that now. So, how to live in the flow, you really do, and you can buy my book. You can buy my book and learn about living in the flow. It's step 7. But there's a lot of preliminary work often that we need to do. And it's not about like authoritativeness or piousness or anything like that. But it's more to do with like where we are in our lives. So if we're feeling really stuck, if we're feeling like we're really unbelonging, if we're feeling like we're really unworthy, if we feel just stuck in shitty pattern after shitty pattern, then from that point there'll be a fair amount of unraveling. If we're like pretty much in love with life and enjoying life, then life will keep kind of showing us and knocking up against us to show us what edges we want to soften, or what streams of energy we want to move forward with. And so our life experience is continuing to kind of usher us and guide us along the way. But when you're like, if you come across a video like this and you're like, yeah, great, live in the flow, that sounds fantastic. It is fantastic. It really, really is. It's about sort of working with your own triggers to then get you to the point where you're starting to get a sense of what your flow state is. So like there will be a whole bunch of different things that might end up being in the flow for you. And the flow is also fluid, right? It's sort of it's always fluctuating, which is why our present moment awareness is so important to yoking this work, because it's always happening in the present moment. Our ability to be with what is, what we're feeling, not necessarily having to get super attached to all of our many circumstances that we've beautifully manifested and created from universal consciousness. So it's like totally epic. All of it, good or bad or right or wrong, is just extraordinary manifestation. But yoking or being present with the emotions that we're feeling and the stories that we're telling, that's like the awareness, and not getting fixated on the truth of the stories that we've told for most of our lives. And as a human collective, as we make a quantum shift into a kind of totally upgraded paradigm, we want to be really open and ready to drop into our expansive nature so that we can shine the greatest amount of light possible for our brothers and sisters, because for the most part, the earthlings and the people that we feel love and compassion for are the ones that we're here for. In that sense, we're here in service. But there again, service doesn't look like how we think it looks. That's why we don't want to get hooked into thought as truth. Because it's not. It's an extension. It's a creation. It comes from that primal force, and then it's fluctuating sort of slight distortion of truth. So our ability to really drop into our expanse and direct our thought and direct our feeling through conscious thought is really part of our power, and we're moving from a paradigm of pretty low vibration, pretty, you know, enslavement, the medieval ages, barbarism, you know, like, you know, slaughter, violence, all that kind of stuff, which is low. It's not, again, from a massive, very extensive, broad cosmic collective level. It's not. It is part of a kind of outworking, a cyclical outworking of energies on this sort of plane of existence. See, this is where when I start channeling certain information, I'm just like, wow, listen to what's coming out of my mouth. I barely even consciously know it myself. But channeling higher vibrations into this world means that we're seeing a bridge being built, literally, vibrationally, and then in manifestation of moving from one perception, one window of perception, and then shutting that window and opening another window of perception that basically allows us to shine greater light for the entire human collective and gives people permission to raise themselves up. And then in raising themselves up, ultimately our behavioral interactions and all that stuff becomes more integrated and more harmonious, and from a broader perspective of our true power as divine beings. We are divine beings, right? So, live in the flow. It is undeniable. If you're not in the flow, you're not in the flow. If you're not feeling at ease, if you're not feeling juiced up and juicy, again, all these words, how you interpret them is totally up to you. And even just my presence might trigger you, right? But feeling into you and yoking the little juiciness that feels good to you. You know, I would like this, or it feel good like to be like this, and da-da-da. And you can start really small. But again, because the material world can show us sometimes instant manifestation via other manifestation, things like money, things like people, we give our power away to those things. So we give our power away to the money or the people, not realizing that we're the ones who's always manifesting our potential. So, you know, stop giving your power to your manifestations, your already done manifestation, and start yoking those like intricacies from within you of what feels good to you. What kind of world would you like to live in? How, you know, and basically withdraw your attachment and your just desperate hold on thinking this external world that you perceive is the real world. And give yourself the power of recognizing that the real world is the fullness of the experience that you're having always having the experience of your own eternal nature from within your own self. And then you're getting to play in this sort of playground of material world of contrast, the perceived world of separation, the beyond the veil, right? So we're moving beyond that veil, but from within form. So it's it's epic. It's just, the words cannot contain the epicness, and nor do words really even begin to contain divine life force, which is all life force. But when you're actually tapping into that greater expanse and divinity of universal cosmic infinite intelligence, it just shapeshifts. Your world transforms over and over again, and you can keep expanding. How much acceleration you move through has to do with how fierce you are in facing your densities and facing your masks and your veils and your fears, and how willing you are to really embody all of your shadow, all of your darkness, all of the, you know, those shitty feelings, and then that we project onto people, but we pretend that we're not doing it, or we pretend that we're not like feeling that way. That's a pretty typical thing, especially in a patriarchy, because we're taught to deny our emotions. So we like mask that, and then we like our life sort of, you know, all the different plates that we have spinning, those all start to kind of come off because we're not in our integrity. The more those spin out of control, we're not in our integrity. So coming back to our integrity often requires us to put down some of those plates, you know, to just come back into ourselves and really figure out from there, from a clean slate. You've put your plates down, you're just a blank canvas. What can you create from that 0 point, right? From that totally clear channel of light. And that's when we know we've broken through and worked through a lot of, I guess, what people call like karmic cycles. I call it the karmic backlog, because we've come in, there's still like backlog to shift as we have a present moment experience. We're actually clearing a lot of our past energy streams, and then we can cut those out and be like in the present moment. I hope that was useful to you guys. Have an awesome day. buy the book. Buy the book. Buy some Alta Love apparel. Come join me on a retreat. You can join me here where I live at the Cleve in North Devon, UK in March, or you can join me in Ibiza at Casa Lakshmi, which is like a sweet, beautiful retreat center in Ibiza. Join me and Katie in Ibiza for Divine Sexy Goddess, where we're going to do yoga and burlesque and just have deep chats about empowerment and also sexual energy and how to burst through lots of conventional fears that women are basically indoctrinated with, for the most part, as a general sweep. That's it. I love you guys. Have an awesome day. Peace out.